Hello, I'm Barbara Peters. Welcome to another episode of the Criminal Calendar. We have an author I'm extremely fond of, but this is the first time we've actually sat down and talked together, so if I mumble a bit, I hope you'll forgive me. He's joined us from New York and Connecticut, Peter Spiegelman. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Barbara.
You are a native New Yorker, right?
I am indeed, born and bred, except for a brief stint in L.A.
Ooh. Okay. Tell me more about that.
I was a wee child, and so I guess it was 3rd grade to 6th grade.
Oh, okay. Wasn't you running away to make movies?
No, nothing, nothing of the sort.
Well, I know from the way you write about New York that you clearly have absorbed it through the pores.
I love New York, in warts and all. It's definitely the capital city of my head.
Well, a lot of authors write about it, and it's interesting to me the different takes that you can find. I love Jim Fuseli's series, sadly now defunct. I know that you and S.J. Roseanne are friends.
We are.
And Shira writes about New York, and she's got her Chinatown sort of series with Lydia and Bill, but then she's written recently, she was just here, the 2 standalones.
Yes, they're excellent standalones. I think that's what's great about New York. It's, it is so multifarious. It is many cities in one, and you can look down so many avenues, as it were. Whether you're looking at an industry, if you're looking at Wall Street, as some of my books do, or if you're looking at various ethnic neighborhoods, whether it's Chinatown or what's left of Little Italy, or some of the newer neighborhoods out in Queens. It's a universe unto itself. It
really is. I was thinking about Linda Fairstein and Michelle Martinez, who both write about prosecutors, one New York City, one federal. Different takes on that. I like Linda's use of interesting New York history as part of her books.
Yeah, she's got a whole secret knowledge thing going on, and I think that's great. I think her latest one in the underground with the sandhogs, I think it's just
Water Tunnel number 3.
Yeah, that's
but
an endless project.
Right, she's gone to a lot of interesting sites, and I do like the fact that you can explore the Natural History Museum tunnels, or go to the Metropolitan Opera, or go to the Botanical Gardens, or the Poe House, or whatever. And I guess New York is really kind of a cosmos for crime, isn't it? There's so much.
It really is. It really is. And I particularly love sort of the cultural backdrop, and some of my stories are set with backdrop of what you might call the money culture in New York, and I think to me that the opportunities for social commentary are just great.
Are you one of those people who grew up wanting to write, or did you sort of come to it at some point?
I think I'm one of those people who grew up with wanting to write. I was sort of weaned on comic books, of all things, and my very first writing, I must have been in maybe 3rd grade, 2nd grade. I illustrated and wrote my own superhero comic book. It was highly derivative. It was called Super Guy, and he had pretty much whatever power he needed to have, and I bound them together with staples and stuff. And I was always very interested in telling stories. And then when I was probably 12 or 13, having been an avid reader of probably beyond comic books, some pretty trashy pulpy stuff, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and kind of the worst kind of science fiction. I read The Maltese Falcon, and this was a watershed experience for me. It just opened my eyes, and it's the first really grown-up book I remember reading, and I knew at the time that there was a lot going on that I wasn't getting, but there was a lot that I was getting, and I was just amazed by Sam Spade as a character, and the nature of how he was a hero. That it wasn't just with his fists. I was fascinated by how he used language. So it was just an amazing experience, and that sort of started a serious crime fiction Jones with me. And not long after that, I started writing, although I didn't start writing fiction. I started writing poetry.
Really?
I was quite serious about it. I still am. I still write poetry. I wrote poetry all through college. I was a hair's breadth away from going into an MFA program to write poetry. And then I sort of sobered up and realized, I have to pay the rent and So I did not go that route. But yeah, actually, Black Maps, my first John March novel, was the first piece of serious prose I ever wrote.
You went, I was interested to see, to Vassar.
I did indeed.
You so often hear about women breaking into men's schools, but I sort of forget that the Ivy League women's schools are open to men. You and Linda, in fact, both went to Vassar,
yes,
as far as I know.
Absolutely. Now, I think when she went there, we were not contemporaries there.
Right.
I graduated in 1980, and Vassar had been co-ed for a while by that point. I think its first co-ed class graduated, I want to say, in the early 70s. Mm-hmm. So it had been co-ed for quite a while at that point. But it was still, I think, 60% women when I went there. But it was a great school, great education.
What prompted you to Vassar?
Oh, it was very disorganized. There was no nothing really approaching coherent decision making behind that. I actually started out my college career at Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, and I don't know what I was expecting of college, but Trinity College was not a fine institution. But I had already spent 4 years at a prep school, at a boarding school, and Trinity just seemed like 4 more years of the same thing, and I was sort of dismayed. And my older sister, was going to Vassar, and so I had visited her there a couple of times. I actually had a very good friend of mine who was going there, and it seemed like a very different kind of institution where the students were actually very interested in the life of the mind, mm-hmm. And that was really appealing to me. There was a lot of intellectual energy there, and that was very appealing.
Life is so much about timing. I graduated from one of the best public high schools in the United States, New Trier, which is north of Chicago, mm-hmm. in 1958, and Vassar was actually one of my choices. I kind of discarded Northwestern because it was too close, and there was that element of contempt plus the climate. But I looked at Smith and Vassar and Duke and Stanford, mm-hmm. and I just couldn't get myself to the point where I wanted to go to an all-female college. So mm-hmm. at that time, Smith and Vassar, there you were, I wound up at Stanford, but to a great degree it was because it was coeducational mm-hmm. and kind of a life of the mind, and the choices at that point for women were a lot more limited than when you went. So that's why I was kind of amused when I saw that you went to Vassar, because I thought, okay, so Peter came in later and had an opposite.
I did. It was a great experience, though. I had some wonderful writing teachers there, and as I said, I was writing poetry, exclusively then, but they were very encouraging.
Is Vassar the college that the woman from Australia or New Zealand, what's her name, Jill something, was that the school where she came? She wrote a wonderful memoir of it. I can't think of her name.
I don't know.
I kind of think it was, for some reason. I think she ended up at Vassar, mm-hmm. so it certainly would have been a place that would have exposed you, as you say, to some serious academic pursuits.
It was great. It was great in that way.
And then you went where? You went to Wall Street?
Yeah, I actually, my first couple of years out of college, I was down in Washington, D.C. And I went down there for no good reasons. My girlfriend at the time was living there, which seemed like a good reason at the time. But I was actually interested in doing something having to do with writing. I didn't know what exactly, but down in D.C. there were lots and lots of not-for-profits, and they all had in-house publications of some sort, and I started interviewing around to try and get a job, some sort of vaguely editorial kind of position. And I ended up getting a job at a consulting firm that did a lot of public policy research, and also created and did statistical analyses on some absolutely massive databases. I started there as a research assistant, which back in the days before the internet meant actually going to the library and pouring through dusty tomes